na Shooting Break.
Elk seizoen maken we een selectie uit de aankondigingen van nieuw werk van zowel binnen- als buitenlandse kunstenaars. We gieten elke aankondiging in een beeld. Al die beelden samen worden een boek. Met dat boek trokken we maanden geleden naar de kunstenaars van wie nieuw werk in het boek wordt aangekondigd. We troffen hen aan in volle voorbereiding en vroegen hen welk werk van welke collega's hen intrigeert. De Canvasconnectie, vandaag met Mount Eerie. Mount Eerie is het eenmansproject van de Amerikaanse muzikant Phil Elverum. Momenteel ligt zijn gloednieuwe album Sauna in de winkelrekken. Phil groeide op in Anacortes, een klein stadje in het noordwesten van Amerika.
Hello. Warning, there's a Belgian TV crew out there filming.
Vanuit Anacortes werkt hij al bijna 20 jaar aan een eigenzinnig muzikaal oeuvre. Eerst als de Microphones en sinds 2003 als Mount Eerie. Het nieuwe Mount Eerie-album nam hij helemaal zelf op in een oude katholieke kerk, omgebouwd tot opnamestudio.
This is the main room, and then there's the control room up above on what used to be the choir loft, with a little window to look down on whatever's happening down here. We need better organization. As you can see, things are just kind of piled up. We have space to pile up and be messy. It's okay. I like the freedom. I don't know if you can hear it on my voice right now, but it's sometimes difficult to even have a conversation in here because the voices just echo and echo. I think that's part of the appeal of this place, is being able to make insane sounding, big, resonant sounds. I work alone. My style is very inefficient, as you'll see. I'm gonna go press record. I have to go in the control room, press record, run across the room, or sometimes I ride a skateboard across the room to go play the part, and then I mess up, and so I go back and press stop and check the levels, and always adjusting. A lot of trial and error, back and forth. A little loud. Although it sounds cool, distorted, so I usually give myself about 20 seconds of blank tape to run to my station over there and get settled. I erase those parts, but on every track you can hear me like running and slamming the door and skateboarding before the actual music starts. I can think better when there are no other minds in the studio. I can let myself do embarrassing things and experiment. So if there was somebody up there pressing the buttons, I think I would be too shy to really experiment fully. I just got into music through recording myself.
Tests.
Just distortion, figuring out how feedback works, setting up a microphone and plugging it directly into the amp and pointing it at the amp and trying to find the different notes. Truly figuring things out. And the studio, what was possible with these, layering tones was so exciting to me. And these things were oh, well, I'll have the same instrument distorted and just truly experimenting. This is the last song I recorded, Turmoil. This is the drums, it's just a cardboard box. And really crappy guitar sounding. I think I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tracks of guitar here. There's also some sound of like a hand on wood instead of a hi-hat. And more of that shimmery organ stuff in the room. Bass. Distorted bass. I guess I probably have distorted bass on every song I've ever recorded. I recorded it in the bathroom. The first track, the guitar and singing. I just wanted to see what the voice sounded like in there. And that's the end of the song. It has this long fade out with these organs rise up, the drums rise up. So that's Turmoil. Let's see here. There's Bob Dylan. I haven't had my Bob Dylan phase yet. So, one of these days. Wow, Tove Jansson. I love her. Tove Jansson is an author and also artist from Finland who made these characters, the Moomin trolls. I don't even know their names. I gotta read these. But these kind of hippopotamus-looking people, they're always kind of outdoors, discovering things outside. Basically, I love the style, and I like this kind of idealized Scandinavian vibe. Idyllic, but also kind of dark, adventuring. And I think that growing up in the woods in this place in Anacortes, where it's pretty inherently Nordic, wet, mossy, picturesque, this is the type of place that makes sense to me. I'm gonna keep looking. Oh, Edvard Munch. I like him. Canadian photographer of massive landscapes. I've got some of his books. I have this one, Quarries, Edvard Munch. Large-scale landscape pictures of mostly marble quarries, I guess. You're looking at this thing and you're like, oh, cool, a pile of rocks. And then you notice that these tiny ladders are in there. You zoom out and you notice, holy moly, people did that. I think we're inherently attracted to scale and like what's possible. It's kind of like a little kid who likes dinosaurs or tractors. And then also, this book is pretty beautiful because they're marble quarries, so the rock is white and the water is blue, and the colors are just so unnatural. I mean, totally natural, but unnatural. I guess I'm interested in landscape art. This idea of this vast landscape having artistic and emotional qualities, or telling you something bigger. Like this photo, this dark mountain, a very Mount Eerie, like an Eerie mountain. This is kind of exactly what I'm going for too. My music project is now called Mount Eerie, and it's a name that feels relevant to this place. And I think my music is of this place, or I try to make it linked. You can see it out the window here. It's distant. It's not a huge mountain. It's not a volcano or anything. And from this side, it's a gradual slope. But on the other side, looking north, it's very dramatic rock face. I grew up just in the south part of the island, underneath that big dramatic face. So when I was a kid, it was always this big thing, like every day, waiting for the school bus, looking at this rock face. It's important to me to be linked to this place that I call home, that I feel at home. I'll show you a cool picture. This is my great-great-grandpa, this guy, holding a salmon that looks like it's about the size of a door. This is in the 1800s. This is over 100 years ago. So my family's been here for a long time. They were cannery people. This was the salmon canning capital. Tourism is the main industry now, and oil refining. There's a couple of big oil refineries, and the tankers come from Alaska, I guess. If it wasn't there, I feel like this place would be a little bit too perfect and almost fictional. So looking out at the oil refinery and smelling the chemicals sometimes. That's what I like about living in Anacortes, that it's somehow in both worlds. Indigenous beauty. I should go to that. It's basically about native North American art from everywhere, which is a pretty vast subject. It's a big continent, and there are a lot of different people here that made all kinds of art. Haida art and literature, I've been going pretty deep. This is a pretty great book, Raven Traveling. Masks, totem poles. These beautiful boxes. Haida were these specific people in what is now British Columbia, Canada, these islands out in the ocean. Sort of clicked with me a couple years ago. I realized that it's just a wholly different conception of what art is. It's totally integrated into the everyday life of these people. Their spiritual life and their just like making food life. The spoon that you're eating soup with is the most beautiful spoon carved out of this sheep's horn. There's no word for art in their language, I heard, just because there is no distinction. And I guess looking at native stuff, specifically from this area, is looking at a blueprint for how to live here now and do it well. Because these are people that had thousands of years of experience with living here now and not messing it up. It's this window into the richness of this culture that is a faint echo now, actually. This discovering Japanese art, I'm definitely interested in that. I have a book that I want to show you. It's not exactly what is in your binder, but these are avant-garde theater posters from like the 60s and 70s in Japan. Yoko Tadanori was an artist that was pretty popular and groundbreaking in that scene. He has this sort of pop art style. And these are silkscreen theater posters, which just look so crazy and good. These are advertisements that would conceivably be posted around town on like the telephone pole to advertise a theater performance. Expensive art that is one-off on a gallery wall is interesting, but somehow seems dead or something to me. Something extra exciting about art on the sidewalk for free. So making these super beautiful posters and having this very innovative design, this kind of wood block effect of this fade, color fades, with actual halftone photographs over the top of it. I really like his style. And I like how it's referencing to the more traditional Japanese styles of like stamps and badges and seals everywhere. What has drawn me to Japanese art is the accessibility of woodblock printing. Japanese Popular Prints is this cool book of not fancy art, like consumer art. Little games, playing cards. Masks, diagrams, maps, like, but so beautiful. Maybe in their day, they were throwaway things, like the wrapper from a product or the program that you would get when you go to the opera. This idea of making your scraps of garbage so beautiful and cutting a woodblock and printing it in 12 colors. Incredible. It's very inspiring. The patience required to make something like that in Japanese art is insane and beyond me. I think my natural tendency is to be sloppy. I don't mean that there's not an attention to detail. I mean mostly a sloppiness in the execution. So on my new album, for example, there's some, you can see the tape and fingerprints and eraser smudges, but I put those on there on purpose. There's attention to detail, but it's about this perception that every line is where it needs to be. I was imagining the ideal setting for a sauna and thinking of like bad weather and kind of next to some water, inside some birch trees, across a field, a distant place that you go to, and there's sort of this glow here in the trees and smoke and steam rising and bad weather coming down. It just seemed like an ideal setting to do that. I tried to find a place that looked like that to photograph. I tried for a couple months, and I drove around, and I couldn't find it, so I just drew it. I drew it. For me, the artwork is part of the music. I still think of music with all these visual components. This is all part of the atmosphere and the world in which these songs exist. The deluxe treatment is to look at the artwork and listen and pay attention to the music. I think it works better that way. Oops. UPS. Thanks. Jeff Wall, another Canadian photographer. Vancouver man. Neighbor. I like his work a lot. They kind of look like snapshots at first glance, but actually they're just super deliberate. There's so much more going on with his work because he, from what I understand, spends years composing these photographs and casting the cast members. Ideally, you can't see at all that it's staged because it looks natural. These are actors, they're playing their roles. It's just they're not in a movie, they're in a still photograph. There's another photo I really love of his called, I think it's called The Storytellers. So it's mostly a picture of this place, this kind of urban in-between place underneath the freeway. Maybe this is a train line. And there's these pockets of people. Homeless people that happen to be native looking. There's a little fire here. These folks are listening in. Information is being passed on. They're sort of sitting in such a way that they might have been sitting that way 1,000 years ago in the same spot. There's this ancientness to it, which I think is pretty amazing to put in such a kind of a throwaway location as a freeway overpass. You would probably drive past this spot and glance at it and never think of it again, but to be reminded that this moment might be ancient and heavy and rich is a pretty nice reminder. Edvard Munch, I like him. Another Norwegian, another emotional freak. There's something freakishness about the exaggeration in his colors and techniques. I think he was one of the early ones to really embrace the emotion itself, rather than trying to hint at the emotion or trying to evoke an emotion through painting some flowers or painting a social scene. What does this feeling look like? I mean, the scream, that's not what a person looks like. That's far from it. He's clearly not even trying. He's just sort of cutting loose, letting it go. And I think back then that was unusual. Another thing I love about him is that he had this outdoor studio that was year-round, and it was like built onto the side of his house, and it was partially roofed, but he would make his paintings out there in the snow, just put on his coat to go work outside. Stacks of these now famous like museum works of art that you see, they're priceless things, but in the photos, these old photos, they're just stacked up under a snowdrift. He was so much more about the making stuff rather than treating it preciously. These two books I have of his are specifically about his printmaking. The woodcuts took it to another level for me because of how raw they are. It looks like he carved his woodcuts with like a hatchet or an axe, but somehow captured the emotion of, I don't know, desolation, usually. They didn't care about trying to appear refined. The feeling of the wood that it's made from is embodied in the thing itself. The material is inescapable. I've seen versions of these same images that are paintings. This 3 girls on a bridge, for example, that's definitely a painting I've seen. It's the same exact composition, but a painting, like an oil painting, so that more detailed, not these gouged wood shapes in the sky. I'm not sure if he painted the painting first and then decided, I'm going to try it as a woodcut, or vice versa. And which one he considered to be the real version. Or maybe he didn't bother himself with that kind of distinction, which I think is inspiring. Steve Reich. I love his music. His rhythmic experiments are very direct and beautiful. They happen to be beautiful. I would love to see his musicians performing live because it almost seems non-human to be that precise for that long and then to slowly drift from precision, to have these phases of grids get off from each other. That's a thing for machines, not people. It almost seems like he's directly manipulating brain waves. By doing these rhythmic time and perception experiments with making the mind think that it is on this grid and then superimposing this other grid of rhythms. He has some stuff like drumming. It's just percussion instruments. It's almost like breaking down the idea of his other work to fundamental components. It's almost like it's training your brain. It's giving you this, okay, here's the rhythm. Uh-oh, but focus on this. It reminds me of when I was a kid watching the windshield wipers on the school bus. And then they were out of phase with each other. And like one of them was slightly, and then I would watch it and, oh, but it's gonna come back around and then they'll be in phase again. And just like, I would stare at that for the whole ride to school and try and understand it and try and like follow along to it. That's what this music is, although deeper. Actually, there's a song on my new record that it's only like 2 minutes long. It's just called Something. A very basic experiment in his style of interlocking rhythms, grids overlaying on top of each other to see how they mesh. It took me all day just locked in, focusing so hard on playing these 6 notes without accidentally hitting any of the false. I'm going to check the level. There is part of my mind that starts to think, what if I just live my life? What will happen? Will people stop paying attention? And I think the answer is yes, of course. I mean, the attention is very limited these days. I think it's insane that I still have whatever attention I do have right now. I just don't take it for granted, is what I mean. On the other hand, that's not why I go to the studio and start working on another album, because I probably will keep making these albums even when the attention does dry up, because it's fun. I mean, I was making this stuff before there was any attention, and it brings me fulfillment and satisfaction. But at the moment, I'm lucky to have you guys paying attention to me.